The first time I met Grace was at a regional chess tournament in Charlotte. I wasn't even competing, I was just there to support a buddy from work who thought showing up meant more than it actually did. I was walking back from the water fountain when I heard this small, excited voice yelling something about a robot rook that jumps over queens. Before I could fully turn around, a little boy barreled into me holding a juice-stained chess worksheet in one hand and dragging a tired-looking woman with the other. That was Grace. Sorry, she said quickly, trying to pull him back. He gets carried away. I held up both hands. No harm done. I looked down at the kid. Robot rooks, huh? The boy Aaron nodded furiously. Yeah. I made a new kind of piece. It teleports. Grace gave an exhausted smile. He's 6. And full of theories. 6 and an inventor. Impressive. I crouched a little so I was eye level. So what happens when the robot rook lands next to a knight? Aaron blinked. It explodes. Obviously. That made me laugh, and I saw the corners of Grace's mouth twitch like she wanted to but didn't have the energy. I didn't expect to see them again after that, but on Sunday I spotted them at the park downtown. There was a little folding table set up by the fountain, and Aaron was holding court with a plastic chess set and a crowd of slightly annoyed pigeons. Grace was sitting on a bench, scrolling her phone, and when she noticed me walking by, she looked surprised, but not in a bad way. Hi, she said, brushing her hair behind her ear. Robot rook guy. I smiled. And you're queen of the exploding knight. That was how it started. The following weekend, I brought over a better chessboard, weighted pieces, vinyl mat. The weekend after that, I brought apple juice boxes and sat with Aaron while Grace took a quiet moment to herself. A month later, I helped Aaron write his first lines of code to simulate his teleporting rook. It didn't feel like anything at first. I'm not someone who's impulsive. I'm a software engineer. Structure is my comfort zone. But somehow this became the thing I looked forward to the most. Not just the chess or the coding. Them. Grace was different from anyone I'd ever dated. And Aaron? He wasn't mine, but it started to feel like he was someone I wanted to show up for. All the time. 2 years later, we moved into a townhouse near Matthews. I brought my desk, my monitor, my cat. Grace brought her books and a chipped mug that said best mom ever. Aaron brought everything else. I didn't know it then, but that moment, kneeling on the grass, listening to a 6-year-old describe battle strategies involving imaginary chess robots, that was the start of everything. Of us. Of me becoming someone new. Aaron never called me Dad. Not once. Not even accidentally. At first, I told myself it made sense. I wasn't trying to replace anyone. Grace had made it clear from the start. Aaron still saw his biological father on holidays, sometimes a long weekend here or there when the guy could string together enough coherence to show up. And honestly, I didn't mind. Not in the beginning. I focused on being consistent. Present. Useful. I helped Aaron build his first volcano for the 2nd grade science fair, foam, vinegar, baking soda. He wanted it to spew blue lava, so I found colored dish soap at a specialty store across town. I still remember him standing on a cafeteria table afterward, explaining chemical reactions to a small crowd of parents. Grace beamed. I filmed the whole thing. That was the rhythm for the next few years. He made short films in middle school, stop motion, mostly with old Lego figures. I helped him edit them in iMovie, even bought him a real camera for Christmas. At parent-teacher conferences, I showed up right next to Grace, taking notes and shaking hands. I didn't miss a single one. But Aaron never brought my name up. Not even once. The first time I noticed it, he was filling out a permission slip for a school trip to D.C. He signed it Aaron Williams, and when it asked for a parent or guardian, he wrote Grace's name. I was sitting right across from him at the kitchen table. He didn't even look at me. That stung a little. But I told myself it was habit. Just a form. Then came the award ceremony for his middle school film project. Grace had tears in her eyes when they called his name. He walked up, gave a small, awkward bow, and thanked his mom in his little speech. Only his mom. I was the one who had pulled 3 all-nighters helping him with lighting rigs and editing software he barely understood. I had even built a miniature dolly track from scrapwood in the garage. But he didn't mention me. Not even a thank you to my parents. On the drive home, Grace must have sensed the shift in my mood. She reached over, put her hand on mine. He's not trying to hurt you, she said gently. He's just processing things in his own way. The divorce was hard on him. And you know how sensitive he is. I nodded, staring out the window. I know. He appreciates you, she added. Even if he doesn't always show it. But that was the thing, I didn't want appreciation. I just wanted. I don't know. A flicker. Something to show I wasn't invisible. I told myself it didn't matter. That love isn't measured in thank yous or names on a form. It's showing up when nobody asks. Being the one who fills the fridge. Changing the oil in Grace's car before a road trip. Waiting up when Aaron stayed out too late at a friend's. This is what love looks like, I kept saying to myself. Persistent. Patient. Invisible. I believed that for years. Until one day I didn't. Aaron was 17 when he directed his school's winter play. A sci-fi reimagining of A Midsummer Night's Dream, complete with space helmets and glowing vines. The script was awful. The costumes were worse. But he poured himself into it like it was Broadway. One evening, he came home frustrated, pacing the living room while Grace and I watched from the couch. They won't approve the lighting budget, he said, flopping into a chair. It's the one thing I actually need. I can't make Titania float if she looks like she's in a middle school gym. Grace offered some sympathy. I'm sure the school will figure something out. Aaron shook his head. They won't. It's not even a priority to them. He didn't ask me for help. Not directly. But he looked at me in that way he always did when he wanted something without saying it. And that was enough. I knew better than to bring it up right away. Instead, I stayed up late that night Googling DIY programmable lighting systems. I found a few forums, jotted some notes, priced out parts. The next morning, I skipped breakfast and started sketching designs. Over the next 2 months, I quietly made it happen. I sold off a few rare programming books I had collected over the years. One of them, a signed first edition, had been a graduation gift from my old mentor. I canceled a hiking trip I had been planning with some old friends. Grace noticed me packing up my gear and asked why I wasn't going. Too much work piling up, I said, not meeting her eyes. By late November, I had built a full lighting rig in the garage. Motion-tracked, voice-synced, with color transitions that followed each scene cue. I even programmed a dimmer sweep that made the spaceship takeoff scene look halfway believable. When I was done, I packed it all into the car, drove to the school on a quiet Sunday, and dropped it off. No fanfare. No signature. Just a handwritten note that read, "Handle with care." Pre-wired and pre-tested. The night of the performance, the auditorium buzzed. Parents filed in with coffee cups and little brothers in tow. Grace saved me a seat in the front row. The lights were perfect. Magical, even. They turned the dingy stage into something worthy of a film set. And Aaron, he stood backstage in a headset, eyes scanning the cues, fully in his element. When the show ended, the crowd erupted. He came out for a bow, flanked by his cast and crew. Then he grabbed the mic for a brief thank you speech. I want to thank my amazing cast, he said, breathless. My mom for always supporting me. And my real inspiration, my dad. He gestured toward the projector screen. A photo lit up behind him. It was of his biological father. Smiling, arms folded, leaning against a car I didn't recognize. I clapped along with everyone else. Grace leaned over to whisper something, but I didn't hear it. I couldn't. All I could do was sit there, hands sore from building something no one would ever see and heart quietly folding into itself. A few weeks after the play, I was in the garage, sorting through the leftover lighting materials, half-used wire spools, cracked soldering clamps, and old Arduino board that had survived 3 builds and 2 coffees spilled directly onto it. I was elbow-deep in zip ties when I heard laughter outside. Aaron's voice, followed by a few others, his friends. They were loading duffel bags into the back of Grace's SUV for their senior retreat. Hiking, bonfires, team building. The kind of trip I would have loved at that age. A kid I didn't recognize complimented Aaron's gear. Whoa, man. This is like REI-level stuff. You got a sponsor or something? Aaron laughed. Nah. That's just my mom's partner. Not my actual dad. He gets weirdly into this stuff. The boys cracked up. Not meanly, just like it was an inside joke. Just something harmless. But I froze. That gear? I had spent 3 weekends testing it. Adjusting the straps on the pack to match Aaron's torso length. Adding a self-inflating pad so he wouldn't freeze on uneven terrain. Swapping out the headlamp battery for a lighter rechargeable model so he wouldn't be stuck halfway down a night trail. I had even packed spare socks into a hidden pocket just in case. Just my mom's partner. Not my actual dad. I stood still, my hand resting on a loop of cord, the laughter muffled by the closed garage door. My brain knew it wasn't malicious. He was just a teenager trying to be funny around his friends. But it didn't feel like a joke. It felt final. I turned toward the window and saw Grace folding laundry in the dining room, her face turned slightly toward the open back door. She had heard it too. Her eyes didn't move. She didn't flinch. Just kept folding. No eye contact. No raised eyebrow. No gentle correction called out to the yard. That was the part that hit hardest. It would have been so easy for her to say, hey, don't be rude. Or even just a small laugh followed by "be nice." Anything. But she didn't. She let it hang there like it was true. Like I really was just the guy who got weirdly into this stuff for no reason. I stood in the garage for a while longer, pretending to untangle wire I had already coiled twice. There's a kind of silence that feels like confirmation. And that day, I heard it loud and clear. That night, after Aaron and his friends had left for the retreat, the house felt oddly still. Grace was in the kitchen, wiping down counters that didn't need it. I was sitting at the table, scrolling absently through my email, not reading anything. She broke the silence first. "He's 18. I looked up. "I know. You know how kids are. They say things." I nodded slowly, like I agreed. But I didn't. Because it wasn't just a thing he said. It was every moment that came before it. Every box unchecked, every name omitted, every silence where acknowledgement could have lived. I didn't argue, though. Didn't ask her why she didn't say anything when he made the joke. I just said, yeah, and went back to my email. I think she wanted me to drop it. Wanted things to slide back into normal. But something had already shifted. The next morning, I offered to drive out to the retreat for their closing event. Grace looked surprised. "You want to come?" "You don't have to. It's just speeches, really." "I'd like to," I said simply. "Actually, I was thinking I could say a few words. At the end. Just something short." She blinked. "You want to speak?" "Yeah. Why not?" She hesitated, then gave a half smile. "That'd be nice." I nodded, then went back to buttering my toast. In my head, though, I was already planning the speech. Not out of spite. Not to humiliate. But to make it real for me more than anyone else. I didn't tell her what I was thinking. That I was done waiting. That this was the last thing I'd ever do in that role. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. There was nothing left to prove. No more silent sacrifices to make. No more birthdays spent building things in the garage while someone else got the credit. I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. And something about that kind of tired, when it finally settles in deep enough, you stop trying to be seen. You start planning your exit. The lakeside retreat center was quiet when I arrived. Late afternoon sun shimmered across the water like glass, and folding chairs were set up in rows under a canopy of pine trees. Kids milled around in their camp shirts, laughing, sneaking phone photos, throwing pine cones into the lake. Grace waved when she spotted me. She looked calm. Casual. Like this was any other school function we'd attended over the years. She didn't ask what I planned to say. Aaron was up front, talking to one of the counselors, his backpack slung low over one shoulder. He didn't look at me when I arrived. That used to sting. Now it just confirmed what I already knew. A few parents gave short speeches, sweet, predictable words about growth and adulthood and how proud they all were. Then someone introduced me. And finally, Aaron's mom's partner, Alex, has a few words. There was a light smattering of claps. I walked up slowly, paper in hand, but I didn't look down at it. I didn't need to. "Hi. I'm Alex," I said, voice even. "I've known Aaron since he was 6. We met at a chess tournament, actually. He dragged me to the snack bar and started explaining how rooks should be allowed to teleport." A few laughs. Grace smiled faintly. "I used to bring apple juice to our weekend matches. Sometimes I'd bring a new board or a weird puzzle set I found online. Eventually, I started helping him learn to code. I taught him how to solder, how to stabilize a tripod with fishing wire. I was there when he lost a tournament and cried in the back seat. I was there when he won one and pretended he didn't care. I paused, watching Aaron shift in his seat, eyes down. I built his first science fair project. Helped him edit his short films. Made sure his equipment worked. I've taken him to doctor's appointments, sat through rainy soccer games, written absence excuse letters, paid for gear, and spent more hours than I can count making sure things ran smoothly so that he could focus on being a kid. Silence settled over the crowd. No more shifting. Just stillness. And the other day, I overheard Aaron say something funny. He said I was just his mom's partner, not his actual dad. He said I get weirdly into this stuff. I waited a beat, let that hang. And here's the thing, he's right. I'm not his dad. Not by name. Not by biology. I was just the guy who showed up. I took a breath and looked directly at Aaron. But sometimes that's enough. Sometimes the person who shows up even when it's inconvenient, even when there's no title or reward, is doing something real. I scanned the group. A few parents looked uncomfortable. A few nodded slowly. I don't expect recognition. I never did. But I also don't want to pretend anymore. This is the last thing I'll show up for. I folded the paper, tucked it in my pocket. Aaron, I wish you well. Truly. I hope you have a beautiful life. And Grace, thank you for letting me be part of it for a while. I stepped away from the mic. Grace had her phone out, but she wasn't recording anymore. Her face was unreadable. Erin stared at the ground. Nobody clapped. Nobody moved. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not proud. Not triumphant. Just unburdened. It started with a single parent's Facebook post. She'd recorded the entire thing, my speech, the silence that followed, the stunned look on Erin's face. By the next morning, it had over 200 shares. By the next afternoon, it was on Twitter, then Reddit. Someone gave it a hashtag the standby father. It spread fast. Comment sections filled with strangers arguing. Half were furious at Erin, entitled kid ignores the only real father figure he ever had. Others blamed Grace, she watched it happen. That silence said everything. Some people praised me. Some said I should have kept it private. That calling out a teenager was cruel. But no one ignored it. Grace texted me the morning it hit 300,000 views. Grace, you humiliated him. Grace, he's a child. Grace, you wanted revenge. Congrats. You got it. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Later that evening, she posted a long Facebook status, one of those perfectly curated paragraphs where every sentence sounded like it had been filtered through a PR team. Parenting is complicated. Blended families are even harder. Erin is a good kid. No child deserves to be shamed publicly for expressing confusion about roles. We're healing. Privately. She disabled comments within 20 minutes. Didn't matter. Screenshots flew faster than she could delete them. Her post ended up on Instagram with the caption, "She's healing now," but didn't say a word when it mattered. People weren't kind. Some commenters shared their own stories, stepdads, uncles, mentors, men who had given years of their lives to kids who never looked back. Others called her selfish. Performative. Imagine being with someone for over a decade and letting your son erase him in front of a crowd. Erin didn't post anything. But his friends did. One uploaded a TikTok with a blurry still of my face during the speech and the caption, "He built the lights for our play." None of us knew. There were edits. Fan cams. Threads about emotional labor and invisible men. I wasn't trying to go viral. I wasn't chasing justice. I was just trying to leave quietly with honesty. But somehow, telling the truth plain and soft and direct cut deeper than anything else could have. Grace's name trended locally for 3 days. I heard she called the school, asked them to issue a privacy request. But by then, it was too late. The story wasn't ours anymore. I moved out the following week. Didn't take much. Just a few boxes of clothes, some tools, the soldering iron Erin never touched, and my desk setup. I left the chess sets. The books I bought for him. Even the cat stayed. She had always preferred Grace's lap. The apartment I found was small, above a dry cleaner in a quiet strip of East Charlotte. The walls were thin, the plumbing a little loud, and the windows stuck if you didn't open them just right. But it was mine. No shared calendar. No polite sighs over dishes. No footsteps above me that I mistook for someone else coming home. I didn't tell many people where I went. I didn't owe explanations. Everyone who needed to know already did. The first few days were strange. I kept expecting to hear the buzz of Erin's old film editing software from across the hall. Or Grace's voice calling my name from the kitchen. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking I had forgotten to pack his camping stove, then remember I didn't need to anymore. After a week, I started volunteering at a local makerspace a few blocks from my building. Kids from the neighborhood came in after school, some curious, some bored, all louder than I expected. I showed them how to use a 3D printer, how to rewire a broken controller, how to solder 2 pieces of metal without burning their fingers off. One boy, Jared, maybe 10, held up a busted RC car with hope in his eyes. "You know how to fix this?" "I can try," I said, rolling up my sleeves. We sat on the floor together, elbows touching. 10 minutes in, he asked, "Are you somebody's dad?" I paused, eyes still on the wiring. "No," I said, smiling. "Just a guy who helps." That was enough for him. Afterward, I walked home with grease on my hands and a tiny scorch mark on my forearm. I made box pasta, read a book I'd been meaning to finish for 5 years, and fell asleep listening to the hum of the street below. There was no big ceremony. No neat closure. Just the quiet dignity of moving forward. Sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is leave. Not to punish. Not to escape. But because staying would mean shrinking. And I was done being invisible. I keep one photo in my wallet. It's worn around the edges, folded once, soft from years of friction against denim and receipts. In it, Erin is 7 years old, crouched in the garage, holding up a tiny soldering iron with both hands like it's a magic wand. His face is scrunched in concentration, his tongue sticking out a little. He's beaming. I didn't take the photo for anyone else. Just for me. A quiet moment that felt like a promise. I still look at it sometimes. Not out of grief, not to relive anything, but to remember that what I gave wasn't fake. It mattered, even if no one else says it did. I don't hear from Grace. Not anymore. Her texts stopped a few weeks after the speech. Maybe she thought I'd eventually circle back. Maybe she realized I never would. Aaron never reached out. That surprised me at first. Then again, maybe it didn't. Some stories don't get epilogues. Some people don't look back. That's just how it goes. I thought I'd feel bitterness. But I don't. Some nights, I sit by the window of the apartment, mug in hand, watching the streetlights flicker as the dry cleaner's sign buzzes below me. People come and go. Horns honk. Somewhere, a dog barks like it has something urgent to say. It's quiet in the way I used to think meant loneliness. But it's not. It's mine. No more proving. No more waiting for thank yous that won't come. No more bending myself into shapes that fit someone else's family portrait. Now, when I show up, it's on my terms. No expectations. Just presence. Just effort freely given. A few of the kids at the makerspace call me Mr. A. One of them drew me as a robot with a coffee mug and laser eyes. I taped it to my fridge. I fix broken drones. Replace old batteries. Help build things that wobble but try anyway. It's enough. I don't wish harm on Grace. Or Aaron. I truly hope their lives are full. I hope someone else shows up for them if that's what they still want. But me? I'm done waiting to be chosen. Some men build legacies in photos and headlines. Some build them in quiet garages over long afternoons teaching someone else's kid how to solder a wire straight. And when that chapter ends, you keep building. Even if it's just for yourself.